Okay, so have you ever heard that saying, like, just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of where we are with this Georgia election case. This whole thing, it's wild. Today's deep dive, we're getting into a turn of events that could really blow things wide open.
Oh, it's huge. And after what felt like ages of, legal detours and side plots, we're finally zeroing in on the really big stuff, the charges themselves.
Exactly. And not just any charges. We're talking 6 of them against Trump, among others, that were initially tossed out. But, and this is the kicker, DA Fani Willis, she's not letting this go. She's fighting to bring him back.
Yeah, she's making it very clear this isn't some legal strategy. This is important. This could have major, major implications for the entire case.
Which is why we're here. We're going to break it all down, the why, the how, what these charges mean, why they were dismissed in the first place, and what bringing them back could mean, not just for the former president, but for, well, everyone involved.
It's important for everyone listening to remember this whole case, it's sprawling. It's like, I don't know, some kind of epic legal drama, right? And at its core, it's about those alleged attempts to mess with, to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia.
Right. Tons of different people involved, accusations, counter-accusations.
Exactly. But within all of that chaos, these 6 charges, they're like, I don't know.
A ticking time bomb.
Exactly.
Okay, so the charges themselves. Solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer. I'm not going to lie, that sounds like something I'd fight in a video game.
Seriously, though, what does that even mean?
It does sound a little dramatic, you're right. But think of it this way, okay? Someone, anyone, tries to convince a government official, someone who's taken an oath, to break that oath, to go against, like, literally everything they swore to uphold. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, so pretty serious stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And just to add to the drama, 3 of these charges, they're aimed right at former President Trump. 3. Yep. And here's where it gets even more interesting, especially with that whole election interference picture in the background. These specific charges against Trump, they all stem from the attempts to influence who'd be the electors representing Georgia after the election.
Wait, hold on. Back up for a second. For those of us who need a little refresher, what's the big deal with electors again?
Oh, they're not just some formality,
Yeah.
They're the ones who actually cast the votes that officially decide who becomes president.
Mm-hmm.
Every state gets a certain number of them based on, like, population size, and usually they vote based on the result of the popular vote in their state.
So are we talking about, like, trying to get those electors to vote against the actual results of the Georgia election?
You got it. The indictment claims there was this whole scheme to, like, put forward a whole group of fake electors for Trump, basically trying to take the votes away from the actual winner and give them to the candidate who, lost.
Wow. Talk about playing for keeps.
Yeah.
So we're talking about potentially overturning the will of Georgia voters. Okay, no wonder these charges are causing such a stir. But before we get into why they were even dismissed in the first place, we need to unpack exactly what went down with these fake electors, right?
Right.
Okay, so we've got this alleged plot, right, to, like, undermine the entire elector system. Accusations flying at Trump, others, and you think, well, those charges, that's it, they'd stick, but then total curveball, they get thrown out. So what happened?
Well, this is where things get, really interesting legally speaking. See, it's not that the judge, in this case, Scott McAfee, he didn't think anything shady went down necessarily. He dismissed the charges back in March because of, how they were presented, really.
So less about what happened, more about how the DA's office described it. That just sounds like, I don't know, technicality.
Yeah, it might seem that way at first glance. But in the legal world, procedure, it's everything. Judge McAfee's argument was the charges themselves, serious, but he said that DA Willis's team, they didn't lay out clearly how those alleged actions were actually against the law.
Okay, I need an example because right now all I'm picturing is, like, I don't know, a courtroom objection,
Okay. So picture this.
Yeah.
You're driving, right, just minding your business, and all of a sudden, blue lights. You get pulled over for speeding, but when you ask the officer what the speed limit was, they can't tell you. So, yeah, you're probably in trouble. But you don't know, like, the specific rule that you broke.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, so how do you defend yourself?
So Judge McAfee wanted that legal speed limit, and he felt like DA Willis's team didn't quite give it to him. But, and I'm just saying, DA Willis, she's known for, for being tough, so I gotta imagine she didn't just accept that ruling.
Oh, definitely not. And this is where it gets even more interesting. Willis, she fires back, says, no, my indictment, it was full of specifics. She pointed to the timing of, when they allegedly tried to pressure the electors, who was involved, what methods they supposedly used. All the evidence, she's saying, it's all right there.
So we've got this clash of, legal titans, McAfee saying, nope, not specific enough, and Willis countering with, my indictment was practically a day planner. How are they looking at the same document?
That's exactly the question. McAfee even said there was an abundance of information, but he was saying it's not the right type of information, at least not in a way that legally those charges need. And this is expert territory, because even lawyers might disagree over what sufficient detail in an indictment actually means.
So not how much information, but how it connects to the law, how those dots are connected.
Exactly. And Willis, to make her case even stronger, she pointed out that the defendants, they had more than enough info from her indictment to get ready for their defense. Right. They knew what they were being charged with, so in her view, the dismissal wasn't justified.
So both sides have points. This appeal, it's not just something procedural. It's going to decide how those very fine legal lines are interpreted. This is where things get really interesting for the overall case.
Oh, yeah. Because if the court decides to side with Willis, well, things could get very complicated for Trump, the other defendants.
Okay, hold on. You can't just leave us hanging. What kind of complications?
Well, we'll get into all of that right after this.
All right, so before we left things hanging a little. What happens if the appeals court says, okay, DA Willis, you've got a point, and those 6 charges, they're back on the table?
Well, for Trump, for the others facing charges, it could change everything.
But we've got this whole RAIO case, right? That's massive. Does adding 6 more charges, even if they're reinstated, does it really make that much of a difference?
It's not about changing the game. It's about the scorecard, right? Those RAIO charges, those are the big ones. They're saying there's this big organized effort to overturn the election. These 6 charges, on their own, they don't change that.
Okay, so same game, but the stakes are higher.
Yeah. Think about it like each charge is a weight, right?
Yeah.
And you're adding them to a scale. Even if some seem smaller, adding those 6 charges back on, it could be enough to tip things, especially when you're talking about sentencing, if someone's found guilty.
So not just about guilty or not guilty, but what happens after.
Exactly. And then there's the psychology of it all. Think about a jury, right? Even if they're focused on the big RAIO stuff, seeing a whole list of charges, it has to have an effect, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
It reinforces the idea that something went wrong, even if it's just subconsciously.
Like that saying, death by 1,000 cuts, a bunch of small things can add up to something big. Okay, but let's zoom out for a second. This appeal, where does this fit into the timeline of the case overall? Because this whole thing, it's been moving so slowly.
And it's about to slow down even more. This appeal, it's happening while everything else is basically paused.
Yeah.
Remember those attempts to get DA Willis disqualified? All those accusations, the conflict of interest stuff, the political motivations, all of that's still going on.
Right. It's like we're in some kind of legal waiting room and no one knows when their number's going to be called.
And you combine those delays with, what this appeal could mean. It really highlights what's at stake here. This isn't about just one election, one state anymore. We're talking about the future of how elections work in America. What kind of message does it send if someone tries to overturn the results and nothing happens?
It makes you think, accountability, how fragile democracy really is, how far people are willing to go to hold on to power. Honestly, it's a little frightening.
It is. And that's why this case, it's so important. We're not just watching history, we're watching the rules of American democracy potentially being rewritten.
Exactly. And that's what we're all trying to do here, right? Make sense of these complex issues, figure out what it all means, and we'll keep following every twist and turn this case takes. But for now, we want to hear from you. What questions are on your mind? Head over to our website, find us on social media, and, let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and, as always, stay curious.